The Senate will please come to order. This Friday morning, in lieu of a devotional, we will begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. I may kindly ask the secretary to thanks. Before we recognize our wonderful pages this morning, I did want to begin with announcements. Are there any announcements? The senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs be relieved of the appointment of Amy Richardson to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and that her appointment be referred to the Committee on Agriculture.
The senator from Chittenden has moved that the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs be relieved of the appointment of Amy Richardson to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and that her appointment be referred to the Committee on Agriculture. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've moved the appointment of Amy Richardson to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board to the Committee on Agriculture. Are there any other announcements this morning?
Thank you, Madam President. Pending entry on the calendar for notice, I move the rules be suspended and that 737, act relating to setting the homestead property tax yield and the non-homestead property tax rate be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Rule 31, the report of the Committee on Finance.
The senator from Washington has moved that pending entry on the calendar for notice, the rules be suspended in 8737, an act relating to setting the homestead property tax yields and the non-homestead property tax rate be referred to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31 with the report of the Committee on Finance intact. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and referred H 737 to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31 with the report of Finance intact. Are there any other announcements this morning as we begin? Seeing none, hearing none, the Senate will stand in a brief recess for the page recognition ceremony until the fall of the gavel. I'll kindly invite the pro tem to join me for the page recognition ceremony. Kindly ask our pages to stand. It's my pleasure to welcome family and friends today for this very, very special ceremony to thank our pages for their service, their tremendous work, for all they've done. How many weeks has it been? 6 weeks? 5 weeks? In keeping the work of this body going, of the House going, and the inner workings of the State House going. I certainly hope this is not the end of your service, but just the beginning. And in the future, we'll see you up here at this dais and in these seats and working across the state. And with that, I'll now, and the family and friends of the pages are welcome to come up. If you'd like to take pictures, come into the well of the Senate. Come on up. Okay. Sylvia Kane, please come on up.
Go right over there.
Yeah, come on right over here. Right here.
Right over.
Take yourselves at home. No sharks over here.
I can go right in there.
Yeah, go anywhere you need.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Usually.
I think we have
Makes it, then you don't have to do that.
Jacob Law. Thank you.
Oh, wait, I think you got one more there.
There we go. There we go.
There you go. Okay. Go ahead. Thank you. Taylor Morrison. You can go this way. There you go. Maya Poluski. Thank you. Grace Warrington. And finally, Jeremiah Watson. Thank you. Thank you so much. Pages, we thank you for your service, and I'm afraid now it's back to work.
Stop.
All right, how about
We're close.
The Senate will please come to order. Returning from a brief recess in recognition of our wonderful pages, we now will move to referrals under Rule 31. We have House Bill H745, an act relating to approval, the adoption of the Charter of the Town of Montgomery, being on the calendar for notice, and the revenues of the state under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Finance. H446, an act relating to miscellaneous natural resources and development subjects, being on the calendar for notice affecting the expenditures of the state under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations. H518, an act relating to municipal energy resilience initiatives, being on the calendar for notice and also affecting the expenditures of the state under Rule 31 is referred to the Committee on Appropriations. And finally, H716, taking miscellaneous changes to education law affecting the expenditures of the state under Rule 31 is referred to Committee on Appropriations. We do have an appointment from the governor for reference. Nicholas Burnham of Portland as a member of the Fish and Wildlife Board. Has been appointed member of the Fish and Wildlife Board. The appointment is now referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. This does now bring us to the orders of the day. We do have at the top of the calendar today S100. I know there's previously been requests to pass over, but unless there's a request to do so, I will move forward. We have on the calendar for action S100, an act relating to universal school breakfast and the creation of the task force on universal school lunch. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on pages 4889 to 4893 of today's calendar. The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, S100 is a bill that Senate looked at and supported last year. It then went to the House and is now back in our chamber. Last year, we passed a universal breakfast bill, and this year, the House returned it to the Senate with universal meals, which would also include lunch. In some ways, it really is a simple bill. It creates a one-year universal school meals program for students attending public schools and those attending our approved independent schools on public tuition. Madam President, to be perfectly honest, I'd say 3 weeks ago, I didn't think the Senate Education Committee, personally myself, would support the bill. Concerned largely because we were afraid that we were really going to basically be subsidizing upper middle and upper income Vermonters and their children for lunches. But as often is the case in this chamber, and I think in the Assembly in general, you hear testimony and one changes their mind. And I think the thing that changed my committee's mind the most, or had the biggest impact on the committee, was when we started to hear about the stories from not the lowest income Vermonters, but those who are just above being the lowest income Vermonters who aren't qualifying for free and reduced lunches. We all know those families. They're in our districts. Some of us may have grown up in those families. Some of us may have played on the playground with those kids, and we know who those families are. They're the single moms, the single dads, one child, maybe two children, and not making enough to really cover all of the costs. And it's particularly difficult right now, Madam Chair, because we know the economic inequity in the United States, and certainly in the state of Vermont, is becoming wider and more significant, and we're seeing it every day. So, Madam President, it was really hearing those stories that got me to the point of really supporting and believing in this initiative. Making certain that students from those families don't get phone calls from principals, from superintendents, from nurses, from school personnel who work in the cafeteria, asking, where is the money that you owe us? Your child has money debt because of meals. Your child was hungry. They bought things in the cafeteria, and you now owe us money. Because those families that I just referenced sometimes have a hard time paying those debts. And we heard that it's humiliating. We know it causes people a feeling of not feeling dignified, not having a dignified life when you are getting those calls and you cannot answer those calls. You're getting the messages and you can't answer the messages. You don't feel good about yourself. You certainly don't feel good about the family that you're raising. You're embarrassed, and that should not happen in Vermont and certainly not in the United States of America. So, Madam President, our committee on a vote of 6-0-0 fully supports this step, which brings us to 1 year of universal meals, which allows Vermont's children to continue to have breakfast and now lunch for the next year as we continue to assess and understand what the real need is out there. And dig deeper and try to find, if in the future the Senate and the House agree to continue this program, to look for additional resources to support it, whether it's through taxing soft drinks, sugar, candies, all sorts of things. Betting, a number of different proposals have been put forward. But given the timing, what this committee, your Senate Committee on Education's intention is to move it with the intent that this will become a full-time annual, or in perpetuity Vermont program for Vermont kids, but giving this next year to find resources that won't require this to become an unfunded mandate, and to really help understand the situation before us. But I have no doubt that my committee, your Senate Education Committee, fully supports the bill because it is concerned about those lower middle class families in Vermont that I just talked about. So, Madam President, in addition to the 1 year of breakfast and lunches, this bill also requires that the Agency of Education report to the Education Committees in House Ways and Means and Senate Finance on the status and implementation of universal meals. The report is required to include data that I've already referenced a little bit in my opening remarks on student participation rates on an individual school level, and if possible on grade level, the relationship between federal rules and state-funded programs and the strategies for minimizing the use of state funds. There's also a section that requires Joint Fiscal Office to prepare a report examining possible revenue sources, as I've already referenced as well, for school meals, including the expansion of the sales tax base, enactment of an excise tax on sugar sweetened beverages, and other sources of revenue not ordinarily used for general fund purposes. I think the major, although it's not particularly significant, but the real change that the Senate Education put in this is Section 8 that says it is indeed the intent of the General Assembly to use the information that I just outlined in the reports to require that this act identify the amount and sources of potential long-term funding so that universal school meals will go on in perpetuity. Madam President, as I mentioned, the testimony was quite compelling. We heard from Vermont NEA, School Boards Association, principals. We have letters from nurses. We have letters from other school personnel that have outlined this situation. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, certainly changed my mind, and I believe got us to the point where, again, it was a unanimous vote in our committee. With that, Madam President, Senate Education Committee asks that you support S-100. This is not the end of the conversation, since, as you'll hear, the funding is coming for this bill and the yield bill, which will be coming to the floor sometime next week. But with that, Madam President, that concludes my report, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the senator from Bennington?
Yes.
Are there any questions? I mean, are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I will support this bill. I think it's a laudable goal.
Thank you.
I'm a little troubled by another issue, which is PCBs. And I know the Finance Committee has been racking their brains how to make sure we address both issues. Unfortunately, the governor has made clear he views tax relief as equally important. So we have three issues before us: food, a poisonous substance in our schools, and tax relief in an election year. And the reason I'm troubled is that if we forward this bill for $29 million, we leave hanging out there about $45 million from the yield bill, which could be put aside for the PCB remediation. And the reason that's so important is that we have mandatory state testing of schools about to begin. In my district, as you all know, Burlington High was shuttered and is now being demolished and rebuilt at a cost of nearly $200 million because of positive PCB tests. So if, God forbid, it should happen to another district, but if it does, the state needs to be ready to aid in ways that we haven't helped districts build new schools for a long time. So I think the Finance Committee has been doing yeoman's work in creating a PCB remediation fund at the same time that they've been figuring out how to feed our kids. That's the sort of thing that I think the legislature does at its best. With that said, given that we're moving one first before the package is agreed to, and given that the governor has the veto pen at the end of the process, my worry is that the PCB remediation fund gets squeezed out and we wind up ultimately with tax relief at the level the governor wants and universal school meals for 1 year. So I will vote for this with faith in the process that we won't leave not just my district, but your districts when they are tested for PCBs hanging with no money for remediation for what can be colossal costs. So with that said, I'm happy to support this. I thank the committee and especially the chair for sticking to this for as long as he has. Thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank the senator from Chittenden for his remarks. It has been the top priority of the Senate Education Committee to first and foremost address the PCB issue. And I want to thank the Chair of Finance as well as her committee. I know that they did pass out, and I'll let this Chair of Finance speak for her committee, a yield bill that does indeed include these dollars. We too, for PCBs, we too are concerned. We've heard from the superintendent of South Burlington just the other day that once, as the senator from Chittenden mentioned, once testing happens, we could have a disaster on our hands. And we are grateful that Finance has agreed to set these dollars aside in the yield bill and also have faith in the process and believe that we will end up indeed with those dollars. So thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Essex Orleans is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank the Education Committee for all the hard work that they put into this bill. S100, the Universal Meals Program, started not last year, not the year before last, or the year before that. It started many years ago. I think Senator Sorokin was in our committee, in the Ag Committee many years, quite a few years ago when we first started pushing for universal meals. And over that period of time, we heard all the stories that finally filtered on through to the Education Committee and felt from the beginning that this was the way to go, universal meals. A little side story, 25, maybe 28 years ago, when I chaired the Troy School Board, we had some problems with kids owing money, parents not being able to pay the money, the children not eating, and it was, I felt, an embarrassing situation. And we instituted universal meals back then. And the end result of that was all the children ate. It didn't cost the taxpayers in Troy, which is sort of a poor town. Well, poor in some comparisons, but not in mine. But the big beneficiaries were the children. And in a democracy, I've always felt that if you can't take care of your children and can't take care of your elders, you're headed for trouble. And we seem to do a fair job on both ends. And as a state, and I think this universal meals program will prove to be very effective, very appreciated. And who's going to be the big winners? It's going to be our children. And so I wholeheartedly support this. proposal and have for 7 or 8 years now, and its time has come. So I would ask my colleagues to please vote to support S100.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the Senator from Bennington and others?
Thank you,
The
Madam
Senator from Washington is recognized.
I just want to assure the body that the yield bill, which we just referred to the Appropriations Committee, but as it came out of Finance last night, does have money for universal meals as an ongoing program. The exact amount will have to get worked out with federal funds and granting, but we know that the commitment is there to do it on a continuing basis, not just 1 year. And we have set up a reserve for possible PCE remediation. We are doing less in tax relief. We do see a decrease in the tax rate, but nowhere near what the House has proposed or what the governor has proposed as a rebate check. So I look forward to an interesting discussion on the floor when the yield comes up, and a very interesting committee of conference.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Madam President, I appreciate the remarks from the Senator from Essex Orleans. We did start this 7 or 8 years ago in the Agriculture Committee, but it actually started prior to that. The big champion for children who started to get coverage for breakfast and lunch was my late wife, Sally Fox. Thank you.
Senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Certainly not one who would disagree with the goals of this program, but sharing 26 years on the Senate Appropriations Committee, I must voice concern about how we pay for it in the future. I don't think that that has been thought through in a way that would give me confidence that it isn't going to be another program that we've put out there that would be very hard to change and that is going to put pressure on the education fund and the property taxpayer in the future. The idea, I can't tell you how many times I've heard about the sugar tax in this building. There's good reasons why it's never passed. Very good reasons. I won't get into that, but I know that was suggested. Gaming might be helpful, sports betting, but look how far we've come in that in the last 6 years. So there is no easy answer to this. It's very hard to vote against feeding kids. I saw the half-page ad in my local paper to vote for S100. I'm sure the rest of you did. I've gotten the glossy mailers at home. I don't know who's paying for all that, but obviously there are groups behind this. But I'm very cautious about how you're going to pay for this next year and the year after that and the year after that and the year after that. What will we be able to do in order to fund this program out of the education fund? They're talking about a recession. Will our sales taxes keep bringing in the revenue to our ed fund that they're designed to do? Or will it fall on the property taxpayer? So while we can all congratulate ourselves on passing this today, it's a warning to the future. Thank you, Madam President.
Are you ready for the question? The Senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I had no intention of speaking, but I am Senator from Essex Orleans made me think of this. We are balancing interests here, and I just want to point out that not too long ago there was a full-page ad in the New York Times magazine. On one page, it was around hungry children, and this was worldwide, but hungry children. on the very opposite page was an ad for a style ad, a house of fashion somehow, $3,500 for a pair of jeans. And I applaud whoever put them side by side, but it makes me think that there is money out here and we do need to take care of children, and our growing disparity is growing ever larger. And if anybody can afford to pay $3,500 for a pair of jeans, and I don't know if anybody in Vermont did, but we can certainly afford to feed children.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the Senator from Bennington and others? Are you ready for the question? The Senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I also didn't have an intention of speaking particularly on the instance of amendment, largely because I deeply, deeply applaud this bill. I was a free lunch kid myself, and I think that I became a free lunch kid far too late in my K through 12 education, only because my parents in general were too proud. We're not free lunch people. You know, that is not who you are. We're not putting you in a separate line. And so I ate whatever I could, ate from friends, but they finally allowed me to become a free lunch kid because that designation allows you to access free SATs, free ACTs, and free college applications. And so I want to recognize with, you know, inflation where it is, even if we did this for 1 year, it's a critical step. But something caught my eye in the amendment, and it's the second instance of amendment. And so I would ask to interrogate the reporter of the bill.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. In the second instance of amendment, as I understand from reading what I see on the opposite page, page 4892, that instance of amendment would strike out subsection F that speaks to the Universal Income Declaration form. And I am wondering if that was the only reference to the Universal Income Declaration form, and that is now struck.
Thank you, Madam President. That traveled in S-287, the waiting bill, from there.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. My further, my further question to the member is, if the committee, in the course of its testimony, had the opportunity to look at the rates at which free lunch students are seeking that access to free college application and college programming materials, and if there was some consideration about making sure that those rates don't drop with the implementation of universal school meals.
Madam President, we did not take testimony on that.
Madam President, I thank the member, and I want this bill to pass, absolutely. Our kids deserve free meals. I may consult with the reporter of the bill and the committee just in making sure that as we pass this monumental and critical change, we don't lose sight of something that helps lift people out of poverty, which is access as a free or reduced lunch student to more supports to access a college education. I, as a young free lunch kid from Los Angeles, was able to apply to schools far and wide because that $75 to $100 fee, that's probably far more than $100 now for applying for each school, was waived for me. And that's probably what allowed me to look at a school like the University of Vermont, and that's probably what allowed me to be here today. So it's just a really important piece of what free lunch kids are able to access, and I would like to look into it further before third reading. Thank you, Madam President.
Off third.
Are you ready for the question? The senator from Addison is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. And as the senator from Bennington noted, the universal school meal, universal income form did travel in S-287 to the governor yesterday. I do want to note that one of the things that the pupil waiting task force took a lot of testimony on was the issue that the senator from Chittenden just raised about making sure that the data is still collected so that students would, under current law, qualify for free and reduced lunches, that data is still collected and they still would have the benefit of access to other programs that designation currently affords them. What we heard is that when we move to a universal income declaration form, that data will still be collected. It would still be recognized by the federal government. We did provide an S-287, $200,000 to the Agency of Education to be able to set up a working group to work through some of these issues, to create the form, and to make sure that we're collecting the data in a way that doesn't impact the eligibility of students for these other programs. So I just want to assure the Senator from Chittenden that that issue has been on the front burner and that that there are things in the works to make sure that that is taken care of as we move into a different way of collecting this data. Thank you, Madam President.
The Senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Just, I do not believe there is a third reading of this bill, and the Senator from Chittenden mentioned wanting to work with the committee. Senate Education is happy to have the Senator from Chittenden in to talk about this. There may be other vehicles for work that the Senator might be interested in doing this term, but just to clarify, there is no third. Thank you, Madam President.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the Senator from Bennington and others? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the Senator from Bennington and others. We will now move to H 736, unless there is a request to pass over. H 736, an act relating to the transportation program and miscellaneous changes to laws related to transportation. The House has proposed an amendment to the Senate proposal amendment as set forth on pages 4894 to 4900 of today's script. And the Senator from Washington, Senator Perch, recognized for the report.
Madam President, the senators of your Transportation Committee do have a further proposal of amendment to the House's amendment to the Senate's amendment to the House bill. Last time the Senate saw this bill, the House made 7 changes to the bill that the Senate passed out. So I'll just go over those 7 changes really quickly, and then the quick explanation of our 5 issues of amendment for our further proposal of amendment. The House did 5 small changes. They changed, we had a grant going to the Vermont Association of Snowmobile Travelers. They changed that to Department of Motor Vehicles instead of V-Trans. We had a question around fare-free, around public transportation, whether it should continue to be free as it has been during the COVID time, and about restoring some service to the DMT services. The House had put in an extra $1.4 million. We had to change that to $1.2 million. There was just a question, we agreed on providing this money to GMT so that they could either continue fare-free on some routes and also use the money to restore some routes. There was a disagreement between the two about where that money came from. They wanted to take it from the maintenance budget. We wanted to take it from the Class 2 roadway and town structures grants. We're suggesting that we're agreeing with them that it can be from the maintenance budget, but we got assurance that any carry forward would be put back to the maintenance budget. So we feel confident that the maintenance budget won't be cut, which is something that the Senate Transportation Committee is strongly in support of. So we do have the money to GMT in here that will allow them to do fare-free or restore service as they see as the best for the different routes. There's a new section that the House put in to give the Secretary of Transportation the opportunity or the authority to relinquish a stretch of highway to the town of St. Albans over the next 10 years. There was one of these before, so now the Secretary of Transportation has 2 opportunities to relinquish some roadway to the town of St. Albans. And they added a section that was in S-280. This is when I reported, this is the miscellaneous DMV bill. There's a section in there about transportation network companies. This is like Uber and Lyft. They wanted to make sure that that passed, so they took it out of 280 and added it to transportation bill, which we were fine with. So all those 5 changes we were agreeing to. The 2 changes that we have further changes to, they added a new section to add $50,000 grant program to electric bikes. So an incentive program for electric bikes. Last year's T-bill had $50,000 for an electric bike program. That program is just now getting started. In the governor's original budget, there was, I think, $1 million of ARPA money for electric bikes. We had struck that out. This adds just another $50,000 in, and we're agreeing to the $50,000, but our instances of amendment for just change how that's done. And they made changes to the airport study, as we call it. This is the study of governance of the Burlington Airport. That was something that we had added to the transportation bill the first time around. Those are the 7 differences from last time the Senate has seen this bill. And I will just go through our 5 instances of further amendment. Actually, there's really only 2 instances of amendment, because 4 of them deal with the electric bike incentives. So the first and second instance of amendment are changing section 2, which, if you remember, section 2 of the T-bill just goes through all the different climate-related, environmental-related investments in the T-bill. So we have, anytime we change anything else in the T-bill, we have to change section 2. That's the first one. The second instance of amendment is adding this $50,000 for an electric bike incentive program. The 4th and 5th I'll jump to, because those 2 instances deal with the electric bike incentive. And the House had it just where the incentive was $200 no matter what the cost of the bike was. Our senator from Chittenden that's in the committee had found a bike that only cost $280, that was an electric bike. So we didn't want to set a $200 incentive, because there are some now low-cost electric bikes out there. So we are changing the language to give the agency flexibility, that they can do like 20% or $200, whatever's less on the incentive program. So we changed the language to give the agency freedom to create the best program as they see fit, depending on the market and what's happening with electric bikes. So the biggest area of disagreement with the House was on this study of the governance structure at the Burlington International Airport. They had basically struck what we had proposed down to a working group, a roundtable with no funding. So we are proposing back that there is a funded study. So if you look at the instances of amendment, there's the money in there. All the $15,000 of the $150,000 will be federal funds. And we're sticking with the proposal that the Senate had with a few changes that we were anticipating the House will agree to. And those changes, other than changing the name, if you remember in the report on this bill, we're creating a working group that would hire a consultant and to work through these governance issues and come out with a report and recommendation on what's the best way to manage and govern the airport. We had 9, they switched it down to 7. We were okay with that. They wanted to take out the appointment to the working group that was from the governor. We're okay with that. They didn't want the AOT secretary to be a voting member, so we agreed with that. Now it's a non-voting member. And in our proposal on the working group and the study, we gave the working group and the consultant all the way till 2024 to finish the work and come back to the legislature with a report and the recommendations. This further amendment, based on what the House had sent us, changes that, gives us a check-in in 2023, so we can see how the working group has worked. What have they found so far? Are they on track to get the report and recommendations? Do we need to do anything different? So those are really the 5 instances of amendment. The electric bikes and the Burlington Airport being the 2 main ones. So with that, thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment with further proposals of amendment as proposed by the senator from Washington and others? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. And you've concurred with the House proposal of amendment with further proposals of amendment as proposed by the senator from Washington and others. We'll now move to S-285, an act relating to healthcare reform initiatives, data collection, and access to home and community-based services. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on pages 4905 to 4915 of today's calendar. And the underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S-285? The senator from Chittenden, Senator Lyons, is recognized for the report.
Thank you, Madam President. We do have a further proposal of amendment, which is on the calendar on page 4915. And I will go through a quick reminder of what is in the bill as we go through the proposal, further proposal of amendment. When we sent the bill over to the House, it included sections for healthcare reform, sections relating to the Agency of Human Service, the Director of Healthcare Reform in that agency, as well as to the Green Mountain Care Board. And I think you will recall we talked a bit about global budgeting, and we talked about the work that we had done in our task force over the summer, as well as our Health Reform Oversight Committee. And we also are interested in the work that is ongoing in the Agency of Human Services for all-payer innovation to sustain our alternative payment reform that we currently have in the state. So the negotiations that the Agency of Human Services is doing with the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Innovation. So as we go through, I will share with you some of the language that we are adding in and the changes that we are making to the House proposal. The House proposal that came back to us was not significantly different from the language that we had sent over. It was restructured somewhat, but as we went through it, we could see a great deal of concurrence. So the changes that we are making, we believe will improve the bill in a final form, and will adhere to some of the language that the Senate had agreed to previously. So as we look at the changes that are being made in the further proposal are in sections 1 through 3. Sections 4, 5, and 6 essentially came back to us from the House, identical to what we had sent over, so there was no need to make changes there. So the changes in sections 1 through 3 relate first in section 1 to the all-payer model agreement that will be negotiated with the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Innovation, and that is ongoing and should be complete by 2024. So this will be work that is ongoing beginning now and then continuing in the near future. The language that we added is E of, in section 1 of little a, added to the considerations that healthcare reform director shall give to the negotiation with the CMS, is we would like to have some type of definitive answer with regard to the role that the Accountable Care Organization will be paying in our state going forward. So we're asking that what, if any, role the ACO will be playing going forward. It was unclear, both in the Senate language as well as in the House language. So we're trying to get some clarity on that. The second proposal of amendment is section 1, 2B, and little Roman numeral 2. The House suggested that we add some geographic or regional work on value-based payments for hospitals and others. And we have put in place, we've just elaborated more on what geographically or regionally based means. So statewide, regional, or hospital-based global budgets for healthcare services, or a combination of these. And that is continuing under the AHS role. The third amendment that we made, it begins with 3A in section 1. And this is the section that relates to the Director of Healthcare Reform working in collaboration with the Green Mountain Care Board to ensure that the development of any proposal includes opportunities for meaningful participation by the full continuum of care and social service providers, payers, and we've added in language, participants in the healthcare system. So as the proposal is developed going forward to CMS, that all folks who are engaged in our healthcare system will be also engaged in one way or another with the process. And then in B, we've added language that says, there was a concern about the word that came back to us from the House about administrative burden, and this section is about engaging the public and interested parties, and the word burden seemed ill fit when we're talking about engaging interested parties and the public. So we've added language, we changed the language to say that the director shall provide a simple and straightforward process to enable interested stakeholders to provide input, easily provide input. So that we clarified that language. Then as we go forward, we also have asked in this section, section 1, that a consideration of the appropriate role of global budgeting for Vermont hospitals should be taken into consideration. I want to make sure I haven't skipped ahead too far. This section I want to make sure I haven't skipped ahead where I don't want to be. Yep. Under little b, oh, we're good. Okay. So in continuing along, we've added language about hospital global budgeting. And that section, I'm going to tell you this section, it begins in little b, section 1. And then we are looking at the role of the Green Mountain Care Board working in collaboration with the Agency of Human Services. So now we've moved away from the work that the Agency of Human Services is doing, and we've moved on to the role of the Green Mountain Care Board and its work in looking at moving away from fee-for-service payments for hospitals. And so in this section, we are adding some very explicit information in number 4 that asks for the Green Mountain Care Board in collaboration with the Agency of Human Services to consider the appropriate role for global budgets for Vermont hospitals. And then we've also added that we would like to have a report from our Director of Healthcare Reform to come back to us no later than March 15th, 2023, or an update on the work that is ongoing with their application to the CMMI. The next section, section 2, is a section that relates to the work that the Green Mountain Care Board shall do in collaboration with the Director of Healthcare Reform and the Agency of Human Services. When the bill came back to us from the House, the language in the bill said that first, the Green Mountain Care Board and the Agency of Human Services should determine who's in charge of this next process. And so we decided that we would add some clarity. So the Green Mountain Care Board, in collaboration with the Director of Healthcare Reform, shall develop and conduct a data-informed, patient-focused, community-inclusive engagement process. When the bill came back to us, the House had suggested that they develop a plan for the process. That became a little bit frustrating to our committee, where we felt that the work should go forward. And so we've added some more assertive language asking for the work to go on, and that the plan for engagement in 1 under B will have a coordination with stakeholder engagement, a coordination with the Director of Healthcare Reform. Again, we're trying to put both the AHS and the Green Mountain Care Board together as they work on either global budgeting for hospitals or hospital changes, and then also with the application to the Center for CMS. We also made a change. We took language out that asked for a timeline for the engagement process because we're asking for the work to go on. We don't need a timeline, and we asked for them to carry out activities within the community and a full engagement process for employers, consumers, healthcare professionals, and so on. That was all in the underlying bill, and the language that came back from the House also reinforced that. So the language that you see going through in numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 simply remove the description of or description of opportunities for, and change that language to be more active and indicating that they shall provide data, that they shall go forward with the work that's included. And then we took out one section about funding that was needed because the funding is included in the bill. And then we asked for an update from the Green Mountain Care Board on January 15th of 2023 to have an understanding of what the community engagement process looks like to the committees of jurisdiction. Then finally, there's an appropriations section. The House removed $500,000 from the appropriations that we had in the bill, and we are adding that back in, and we understand that that will be agreed to on the with all parties involved with appropriations on the House side and the Senate side. So those are the changes that we have made, basically to make the community engagement process that will be carried out by the Green Mountain Care Board to look at hospital transformation, a more active process, and that will begin as soon as possible. We've added in language that will allow suggests that the money that is being appropriated might be used for consultants to help with the work that both the board and the executive director of healthcare reform are working on. Madam President, we ask the body to support this proposal of amendment as we send it back to the House. And thank you very much.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the Senator from Chittenden and others? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the Senator from Chittenden and others. We now have on the calendar for third reading H-265, an act relating to the Office of the Child, Youth, and Family Advocate. Third reading was ordered May 5th. Are there any amendments before third reading? Please listen to the third reading of H 265.
H 265, an act relating to the office of the Child, Youth, and Family Advocate.
The question now is, shall the bill pass in concurrence? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you pass H 265 in concurrence. We now have on the calendar for third reading H 466, an act relating to surface water withdrawals and interbasin transfers. Third reading was ordered on May 5th. Are there any amendments before third reading? The Senator from Windsor, Senator McCormick, is recognized for his amendment, which is a floor amendment and being passed out.
Madam President, while the amendment is being passed out, I'd like to explain why offering this amendment at third reading. Senators will remember that yesterday the presentation of the bill was of necessity somewhat off-order clumsy. The Natural Resources Committee introduced the bill with amendments, which the Senate passed, and then the Agriculture Committee offered a strike-all amendment, and the Natural Resources and Energy Committee recommended that the Senate pass the strike-all amendment. And it was our determination that just to make the presentation simpler, we should leave it at that second reading, and then at third reading offer this actually, I hope the Senate will agree, non-controversial amendment. It has 3 instances of amendments. The first 2 are technical. Ledge Council informed us that there were 2 citations in the bill as they had prepared it that were actually incorrect. To cite to the sections of that we want to cite to, it's necessary to correct the citations. The third instance of amendment is a response to the public discussion of the bill. When we had gotten complaints, in particular from the agricultural community, that there had not been enough public input. And this third instance of amendment requires the Secretary of Natural Resources to solicit and to obtain public input going forward. The Natural Resources and Energy Committee is unanimous. Well, we had someone on approves. I'm not sure. It was. There were no negative votes. It may have been 5-0. It may have been 4-0-1. And so we would hope that the Senate would accept the amendment and then pass the bill as amended. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Senator from Windsor? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've proposed to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Senator from Windsor. The question now is, shall the bill pass in concurrence with proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've passed H 466 in concurrence with proposals of amendment. We now have the calendar for action H 743, an act relating to amending the charter of the town of Hardwick. It was read for the first time on May 9th and referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which reports has considered the bill and recommends the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of H 743.
H 743, an act relating to amending the charter of the town of Hardwick.
Senator from Rutland, Senator Collmore, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. Voters approved the amendments to the Hardwick Charter back on December 9th, 2021. The majority of H 743 addresses technical corrections necessary to remove complicated legalese, update the titles of certain offices such as Select Board, eliminate references to the town school district, and to resolve ambiguous general terms such as board, which was used to describe both the Select Board and the school board. The following sections of the charter contain these technical corrections. Sections 101, 105, 107, 110, 112, 114, 116, 117, 501, 502, 706, 902, and 903. Section 113 of the bill eliminates charter-specific procedures for the meetings of town boards and instead cross-references Vermont's open meeting law. Later in the bill, Section 502 in subsections D through F are amended to also cross-reference the open meeting law for purposes of select board meetings. Section 302 is amended to repeal the requirement that certain officers be elected. These repeals do not eliminate the offices. However, they will allow Hardwick to appoint or eliminate offices as provided in Title 17, the state's election laws. The following offices are removed from the list of elected town officers: trustees of public funds, auditors, treasurer, which is now combined with the office of clerk, listers, and fence viewers. Section 304 is amended to remove references to elected auditors and to add the duties of the treasurer to the new office of town clerk and treasurer. In the following section, 305, the treasurer's office and duties are repealed from the charter. Section 306 is amended to provide the zoning administrator shall be appointed according to the general law provisions in Title 24. That section is further amended to state that the zoning administrator shall serve under the town manager. This section is also amended to eliminate the appointed office of pound keeper. Section 307 is amended to change the title of the Zoning Board of Adjustment to the Development Review Board. Similar amendments are made in Section 1303. The section is also amended to require the Planning Commission vacancies be posted electronically in a digital news forum and on the town website. The same amendment is made in Section 1502 related to the postings of the annual budget. Section 905 is amended to require that the fire department officers and fire chief shall be elected from a slate of candidates that are provided to the town manager by the fire department. This section is also amended to authorize the select board to permit non-residents to serve on the fire department. Section 1103 is amended to clarify that the town's Board of Civil Authority is required to establish polling places for annual or special town meetings that are held by Australian ballot. Section 1301 is amended to provide that the zoning administrator shall be nominated by the Planning Commission and appointed by the Select Board for a 3-year term. Section 1509 relates to fees and fines. That is repealed. The town will now rely on fee and fine provisions in general law. Section 1702 through 1704 and 1707 through 1705 are repealed. These were reserved sections that refer to expired transitional provisions. The vote on the Hardwick Charter was 81 yes and 54 no. The committee heard from our alleged counsel and voted 5-0-0 and hope the full body concurs. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill be read the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of H 743. We have the calendar for action, JRS 53, a joint resolution supporting transgender youth and their parents who seek essential medical care for the treatment of gender dysphoria. Introduced on May 2nd, referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which recommends that the resolution be amended as appears on pages 4920 to 4922 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the resolution ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the resolution.
JRS 53, joint resolution supporting transgender youth and their parents who seek essential medical care for the treatment of gender dysphoria.
The senator from Addison, Senator Ferry, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare.
Thank you, Madam President. Because the language in this resolution is so keenly important, I request that the secretary read the resolution as amended in full.
Without objection, the secretary will read the resolution along with the amendment.
The
committee respectfully reports that it is considered the same and recommends that the resolution be amended by striking out all after the title and inserting in lieu thereof the following. Whereas Vermont values the transgender members of our community and has been a leader in establishing policies that prohibit discrimination based on gender identity, and whereas the American Academy of Pediatrics Vermont chapter, the University of Vermont Children's Hospital, the Vermont Medical Society, the Vermont Academy of Family Physicians, the Vermont Psychiatric Association, the Vermont American Academy of Emergency Physicians, the Physician Assistant Academy of Vermont, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Medical Association, and other leading healthcare authorities support best practice medical care for transgender youth. And whereas patients, their parents, and their healthcare providers should decide what medical care is appropriate for a patient in accordance with current medical best practices, not politicians. And whereas denying best practical medical care and support to transgender youth can be life-threatening and has been shown to contribute to depression, social isolation, self-hatred, risk of self-harm, and suicidal behavior, and more. And whereas more than a third of the 150,000 transgender youth 13 to 17 years of age in the United States live in the 15 states that have restricted or banned access to best practice medical care for transgender youth or are considering legislation to do so. And whereas parents of transgender children, like all parents, simply want to do what is best for their child. And many such parents now face prosecution for child abuse in some jurisdictions for seeking best practice medical care for their transgender child as recommended by their healthcare provider. And whereas Vermont recognizes the importance of letting transgender youth know that they are seen and valued for who they are, protected from stigmatizing policies that jeopardize their health and well-being, and supported by a community that wants to see them thrive. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives, the General Assembly condemns the actions of states to ban and best practice medical care for transgender youth and prosecute parents for seeking such essential care for their children. And be it further resolved that the General Assembly shall explore all available options to ensure that transgender youth and their families are safe in Vermont to make the best medical care decisions for themselves in consultation with their healthcare providers. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to the Assistant Secretary of Health for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Admiral Rachel Deans, U.S. Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, and U.S. Representative Peter Welch of Vermont.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I also asked that a letter from a variety of medical organizations and providers in Vermont be distributed to each of the senators and the secretary. As that's getting distributed, I'm going to start my report, Madam President. And I'm going to do this, I hope, Brian, but we'll see. Our country is in the midst of a wave of hatred, intimidation, and discrimination against transgender kids and their parents. Over the past year, 4 states, including Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, and Tennessee, have enacted legislation preventing transgender youth from accessing critical medical care and imposing criminal penalties against parents who help their children obtain such care. In Texas, the governor directed the state to investigate parents for child abuse if they support their transgender child receiving care. 10 other states have pending legislation that would impose similar restrictions and criminal penalties. More than 150,000 transgender youth live in these 15 states. Such legislation leaves some of the most vulnerable children and youth in our country subject to harassment, life-threatening discrimination, and without access to medical care that could save their lives. Transgender kids are much more likely to skip school, drink alcohol and use drugs, engage in self-harm, contemplate or attempt suicide, and experience bullying, threats, and physical or sexual violence. Many transgender kids experience gender dysphoria, a clinical diagnosis recognized by the American Psychiatric Association, which is the feeling of discomfort or distress that may occur in people whose gender identity differs from their sex assigned at birth or sex-related physical characteristics. Gender dysphoria can be devastating, and without access to critical medically necessary care, transgender youth are even more at risk of depression, self-harm, and suicide. Madam President, your Health and Welfare Committee approached discussion of this resolution as a question of both human rights and access to critical medical care, an issue we tackle every session. I provided each of you with a letter from a coalition of medical organizations in Vermont, which, if I may, Madam President, I'd like to read an excerpt.
You may.
These organizations write, "We denounce the large number of legislative proposals throughout the nation that will harm transgender and gender diverse youth. Every individual is entitled to high quality, evidence-based medical care, regardless of gender or sexual orientation. These proposals drive discrimination, reinforce stigma, and create barriers to care. Every major medical association in the United States recognizes the medical necessity of transition-related care for improving the physical and mental health of transgender people. As physicians and healthcare leaders in Vermont, we believe that medical decisions belong to transgender and gender diverse youth, their parents, and their healthcare practitioners. We oppose any efforts for legislative interference in this decision-making, and we call on legislators across the country to reject these harmful measures. Over the past several decades, Vermont has been a leader in recognizing and upholding the rights and dignity of LGBTQ Vermonters. In 2007, the Vermont legislature added gender identity to the list of protected classes of individuals to prevent discrimination and provide a higher level of legal protection for transgender individuals. About a decade ago, the University of Vermont Children's Hospital created the Transgender Youth Program to support gender variant youth and their families through a multidisciplinary team of physicians and mental health providers. Dr. Erica Gibson, a pediatrician who leads the program, testified in favor of this resolution. The presence of this program in Vermont has greatly improved access to this crucial medical care. In 2019, the Department of Financial Regulation issued Insurance Bulletin 174, prohibiting insurance companies from excluding coverage for medically necessary treatment, including gender affirmation surgery or gender dysphoria and related health conditions. Today, by approving this resolution, the Vermont Senate is affirming the dignity of transgender youth and their right to access medically necessary life-saving health care. Okay. We are also standing with parents who are trying to do what is best for their children to get them the care that they need to be healthy in their bodies and in this world. Thank you. We are denouncing the actions of our colleagues in other states that have enacted such egregious and harmful legislation. As a mother of 2 teenagers and a young adult, I know how difficult it is for kids to grow up in the world as it is today, especially after 2 years of a pandemic that has severely impacted the mental health of so many young people. For transgender kids, the path is even more difficult. Okay, near the end of the letter I provided to each of you, a Vermont parent of a transgender youth is quoted. And if I may, Madam President, I will read again from that letter and take that as a yes. Thank you. Being 13 is difficult enough. You don't feel comfortable in your own skin, either physically or metaphorically. Gender affirming care means that my son sees his healthcare providers as allies and valuable resources. It means that he's empowered to feel comfortable taking good care of his body, while looking forward joyfully to the body he wants, knowing that his healthcare providers are fully invested in helping him get there. It means that he has the space and resources to attend to his mental health with absolutely no shame. It means that his family does not live in fear that our beloved boy will become part of the statistics of trans kids who attempt suicide. Gender affirming healthcare is a human right. Everyone deserves to walk through this world comfortable in their own skin. Many thanks to Michelle Childs and the Legislative Council for her good and swift work on this resolution, the first resolution that she's drafted during her time with Legislative Council. Thanks also to Jessica Oski for her research and advocacy of this resolution. The vote in committee, Madam President, was 401, and we urge this body to pass this resolution. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate amend the resolution as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I can't add significantly to what the senator from Addison has said, but just to affirm that this is about providing care for kids. It's about providing a safe, caring environment for children who need some very important medical attention. Why would we discriminate against a child with this debilitating anxiety or severe depression? We wouldn't do that under any other condition. So the condition of gender dysphoria warrants the attention that we are giving it. And I ask you to please support this resolution so that we might support our kids and ensure that they have the medical care that they need. And just as an addendum, the medical research is very clear that when children receive this support, they become less apt to commit suicide, less apt to commit self-harm. So keeping our attention on the needs of children in this area is critically important. Thank you, Madam President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank this committee for all the work that it's done, brought this to them at the 11th hour. As we saw all of the horrible things that were happening in other states and felt very strongly that we needed to make this movement. I very much appreciate the effort. I want to say, I know it is no secret, I am part of the LGBTQ community. But what I want to say is, when I was growing up, there was no LGBTQ community. It was just the gay community. And I was sitting here thinking about 3 people close to me who I knew in my teens and 20s who identified at that time. They thought that they were part of the gay community. But what they realized over time was actually they were most true to themselves, living in the world as trans men. They were struggling mightily in their teens and 20s with substance use, with depression, felt completely and totally unseen and felt like they had nowhere to turn to. So to be here today on the floor of the Senate and know that we can say affirmatively, we understand the importance of supporting people in being, as the senator from Addison said, who they are, is a huge step forward that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. The other just quick point I want to make is I think sometimes when we come up against the culture wars, when we come up against the very nasty political debate that happens outside of our chamber here. We lose sight of the fact that this is not about other people's children. This is about our children. This is about Vermonters' children. It's about our constituents and what they are doing to support their children. And I'm so grateful that we can stand here today, hopefully supporting this wholeheartedly, saying we stand with parents and children in this state, that they will have the support that they need to live true, full, supported lives. Thank you, Madam President.
Shall the Senate amend the resolution as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Orange is recognized.
Madam President, I grew up before the last senators to speak, and I grew up in a world where it was common not to afford the respect and humanity and the changes that we have adapted as people. I ask myself how I came to change and how I have become appreciated things differently than I did as I was raised and I hung out with others. And I didn't come to view the world differently and others differently by having people condemn me or denounce me or being not having gotten there yet, Madam President. And so I ask myself, are those the best words that we should be using as we speak to people in other states that are trying to grow the way Vermonters have perhaps been a bit ahead of them? And I'm not trying to second guess anybody, but I just, people in Texas, for heaven's sakes, are wrestling with a problem, and it saddens me that they are, and I urge them to keep working on it, and I trust, heaven willing, that they will get there. And I don't want to beat them with a stick for not having got there yet, and I would like to be as helpful as possible to them. And I don't know if this resolution does that. I'm not going to oppose it, but it's difficult, and I applaud. I support the sentiments that this resolution tries to foster and grow. Some of the words strike me as being not as productive as other words might have been. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? The senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Well, thank you, Madam President. Because by example, the example that we have in this state, the community that we have in this state that will provide support and medical care for children and families, that will demonstrate to others the important needs of children and families in their states. We are not debating any underlying conditions or assumed conditions. We are not debating genetic differentiation. We are not debating the role of DNA or the role of the environment. We are looking at children who are in significant need of care. That's what this resolution represents. And by providing that care in this state, we are providing an example for Texas, for Alabama, for Florida, for any other state that refuses to believe that children have debilitating anxiety or depression. Madam President, this resolution is important. It's a message that we are sending that this state is in full support of providing essential medical care to children who demonstrate symptoms of gender dysphoria. Thank you, Madam President.
Question is, shall the Senate amend the resolution as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the resolution as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare. The question now is, shall the resolution be read the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of JRS 53. We have on the calendar today S90, an act relating to establishing an amyotrophic lateral sclerosis registry. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on pages 4922 to 4942 of today's calendar. And the underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S90? I believe the senator from Rutland, Senator Terenzini, is recognized for the report.
Thank you, Madam President. My colleagues in the Senate will recall that back in late March, I brought forth S90, an act relating to establishing a amyotrophic lateral sclerosis registry, better known as ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. We are pleased that the House has sent back some changes that we think actually improve the bill. And there are just a couple that I will review quickly here, and we'd ask that you would concur. So in subsection 173, they've added language into the duty of healthcare providers that would also require the medical professional to report the individual who was diagnosed with ALS, their occupation and industry of employment, and other elements to determined by the rule. In subsection 174 in confidentiality, number 2, notwithstanding, the commissioner is authorized to enter into data sharing and protection agreements with researchers or state, regional, and national ALS registries for bidirectional data exchange if such agreements are consistent with privacy, security, and disclosure protections in the chapter. Also, with regard to researchers, commissioners must also obtain evidence of the approval of their academic committee for the protection of human subjects. And then section 2, the Department of Health educational materials. A, by 12/31 of 2022, the commissioner shall develop and make available written educational materials that provide information about the National ALS Registry, including how to participate in the National Registry and resources that can provide assistance with the registration process, eligibility requirements for participation in the National Registry, and contact information for the National Registry and local and national research entities investigating the cause of ALS. By 12/31/2022, the Department of Health, in cooperation with appropriate professional licensing boards, professional membership associations, shall ensure the educational materials are available to all licenses healthcare providers in Vermont. And those are the additions to the bill that the Senate Health and Welfare Committee concurred with. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S90? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've concurred with the House proposal of amendment on S90. We now have on the calendar S148, an act relating to environmental justice in Vermont. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on pages 49 to 4936 of today's calendar. The underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S 148? And I believe the senator from Addison is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. The Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee reviewed the amendments to S 148 relating to environmental justice. and recommending the Senate concur. There are numerous changes, but they tend to be small changes along the dates in order to line up the process or adjustments to definitions. I will briefly walk through them, just some of them to highlight. Again, there are improvements in definitions, some phrases that were improved in terms of how they were applied throughout the bill, creating, for instance, covered agencies as a new category, rather than having to name every agency repeatedly throughout the bill. There was a reconciliation of limited English proficiency with a federal definition to bring it into line with that definition. We adjusted dates on the timing for the creation of bodies and delivery of reports. In the, for instance, the rulemaking that is at the heart of 156. So I think a fair amount of the work with the Agency of Natural Resources, which has the largest role and responsibility for delivering the work in this bill, was to make sure that the timelines provided were workable for them. We did not want to put in the position of having a timeline that was unworkable and then for failure. There's an adjustment to the advisory council, the number of meetings. The Senate had said at least 9 times. The House came back with not more than 8. Larger areas of change was there are 2 councils created. People may remember there's an interagency council as well as an advisory council outside the legislature. As we sent it over to the House, the advisory council had 17 members, which I think the House deemed unwieldy. So the areas of expertise and experience of the members of that advisory council stays the same, but in places, for instance, where there were 2 representatives from the same category cited, there's now a single member. There was a section about how the council was funded that allowed for funds to be, well, I'll read what members of the advisory council may accept funds from federal government, a political subdivision of the state, or a 501c3 charitable organization, and may expend funds for purposes that are consistent with this chapter. And we found that, well, it was an awkward concept as it left the House, left the Senate. The House deliberated further, reading that, and I'd say it's not a removal of funding. It is that I'd say it is a central responsibility of government to make sure these councils are funded and through ordinary appropriations, as opposed to putting them in the awkward position of having to fundraise, in essence, to carry out normal operations of government. In the appropriations section, there was adjustment. The total appropriation as it left the Senate was $700,000. As it was returned from the House, it is $750,000. Our committee member, who's a member of appropriations, has carried over information to the Appropriations Committee, and those are the nature of the changes to the bill. So, definitions, dates, and we concur with those 500 and recommend that the Senate.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S90? Are you ready for the question?
That's not the question.
Excuse me. Thank you. On S-148, excuse me. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S-148? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you concur with the House proposal of amendment on S-148. We now have on the calendar S-161, an act relating to extending the baseload renewable power portfolio requirement. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on pages 4936, 4942 of today's calendar. And the senator from Addison, I believe, is recognized, or the senator from Washington is recognized. Thank you. The chair of the committee for the report.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to request we pass over S-161, and while I'm at it, 261 and 269, finance busy, and we will be looking at those proposals of amendment this afternoon.
Thank you. We will now move on to S-188. We have on the calendar today S-188, an act relating to regulating licensed small cannabis cultivation as farming. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on pages 4942 to 4948 of today's calendar. And the underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House amendment on 188? I believe that Senator from Chittenden is now recognized for the report.
Thank you, Madam President. Ultimately, we will ask to concur with the further proposal of amendment, but the other body has made a few changes. So I'd orient senators by reminding everybody that this is a bill that makes some changes to the cannabis regulation and at its heart tiptoes towards treating cannabis cultivation like agriculture. You are, after all, buying a crop. But I say tiptoe because we exist under framework of federal prohibition, which has a deep impact on the comfort level of our Agency of Agriculture. In fact, they have no comfort at all of just a blanket consideration of cannabis cultivation as farming. So on 4943, we'll see that the other body has just added to our work by pulling in hemp cultivation. And as we've discussed elsewhere, hemp is for one more season under a state pilot as authorized by the feds. And then at the end of this growing season, it's a little up in the air exactly will happen for our hemp program. So further in the language, you'll see section 9 that we're asking the Cannabis Control Board to submit proposals for how they might regulate the hemp program. But here on 4943, we are making it very clear that Cannabis Control Board is in charge of hemp products and hemp-infused products. These are what senators will see at convenience stores, gas stations, all manner of promises of CBD products, et cetera. And these, some of them fall kind of in a nether region that we're not really got a hold on. So this is just making it clear that the Cannabis Control Board has oversight of all of those kinds of products. Then on 4945, you see further detail about the Cannabis Control Board having testing, control over testing. Again, this was anticipated and wanting one board to have sort of the whole suite of this piece of cannabis, oversight over all of it. Again, 4947 is where we're directing the Cannabis Control Board to come back to the legislature by January to tell us if and how they might take on hemp. The other change that the other body made had to do with sales tax exemption. Senators will recall that when I say we tiptoed towards treating cannabis farmers as farmers, we did that for only the very smallest licensees, that is 1,000 square feet, and those who are growing primarily outdoors. And what we said was people that are farmers already, in other words, they're in current use, they're under the required agricultural practices for their main business, shall be also considered farmers if they get a permit for small outdoor growth. And then we go on to say that means that you fall under the Act 250 exemption, as you do with the rest of your crops. And of course, there is a sales tax exemption for farmers, as we know. And what the Senate said was those farmers, small outdoor growers who are permitted, will also have the sales tax exemption for materials or whatever they're buying for the cannabis cultivation. The other body has taken that sales tax exemption out. This is an old battle, Madam President. However, it's absurd to ask a farmer to go into a store and say, I need to buy twine, and this is for broccoli, so this will be sales tax exempt, please. And I need to buy some kind of cutting tool, and this is for cannabis, so be sure to charge me the sales tax there. This is a universe of people that are already exempt from the sales tax by virtue of being farmers. That's the only people we're talking about. And in order to not have that be ridiculous and unworkable, and in fact, maybe pressure farmers to, shall we say, not reveal exactly what crop they're using, what piece of material that they're buying for, just at the same time we're trying to bring these people above board. We would ask that we stick the sales tax exemption back in there and that we once again try our hand with the other bill. So senators will see, I believe it's been passed out, our proposal of further amendment is accepting everything they've done and asking that we reinstate the sales tax exemption in this very, very narrow case. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the senator from Chittenden? The senator from the senator from Washington is recognized.
I'm from Finance.
Friday.
Thank you, Madam President. This section of the bill did go through Finance, and just one of the things I have tried for years to avoid is placing taxation on a bill according to how it is used. Those of us that were here some time ago remember the legendary bark mulch. And bark mulch was not taxable if you used it for agriculture, but if you put it on your roses, it was. That left the retailer with the obligation, and as a retailer that collects the state sales tax and is responsible for it for no remuneration, we also ask these retailers to determine the end use of that bark mulch. And eventually, the Department of Taxation upped its enforcement, and it went out, and we had all kinds of farm and garden stores getting assessed, $300,000 worth of back taxes and penalties. And since that time, I believe the Committee of Finance has really worked to not put that responsibility on the retailer. It's virtually impossible to tell if that thing of twine is tying up your cannabis or your tomatoes, and it's probably tying up both. And it really is not fair to anyone to do this.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the senator from Chittenden? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you concur with the House proposal of amendment with a further proposal of amendment as proposed by the senator from Chittenden. We have on the calendar today S-258, an act relating to President. Senator from Wyndham is recognized.
I apologize, Madam President. I'll take up S-283, miscellaneous ed.
We will now move forward to S-283. An act relating to miscellaneous changes to education laws. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on pages 4955 and 964 of today's calendar. And again, the underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S-283? The senator from Bennington, chair of the committee, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Education is requesting a different approach to this. Rather than further proposal of amendment, we are requesting now a committee of conference. And by way of explanation, House Education Committee is asking to push out testing for PCBs, and your Committee on Senate Education firmly believes that this is a right-to-know issue and that families should know as soon as possible. So, and we are requesting a committee of conference. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the Senate not concur with the House proposal of amendment and a committee of conference be appointed? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've not concurred with the House proposal of amendment, and a committee of conference shall be appointed. I will, and we could also do that now if you'd like. I believe we do have a committee of conference for recommendation on behalf of the Committee on Committees. I'm pleased to announce that the following members have been appointed to the committee of conference on S-283. Senator Campion, Senator Chittenden, and Senator Hooker. Shall I move back to S-258? S-258, an act relating to agricultural, water quality enforcement, and dairy farming. The underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S-258? And the senator from Rutland is recognized for an explanation.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators may or may not remember miscellaneous ag bill, which was in our chamber earlier this session, which we voted for. The other body has made 4 changes to that. In Section 6, the House added language clarifying that capital assistance equipment program may be used to advance projects with the most significant or cost-effective benefits for the purposes of the section, including reducing nitrogen runoff. In Section 10 is the amendment that the chapter entitled 6, where farming is defined for the purposes of the RAPs, the rules that govern all farming. It adds a term, agricultural activities, and lists the many activities and actions that are a part of modern farming in Vermont, but are not currently specifically defined as farming. Section 11 provides that to determine the scope of nuisance protection under the state's right to farm law, agricultural activities defined in Title VI shall be entitled the rebuttable presumption that they do not cause a nuisance. And finally, in Section 12, it amends the right to farm law in Title 12 that clarifies that farming as defined in Title VI and agricultural activities as defined in Title VI are eligible for the rebuttable presumption that they do not cause a nuisance under the right to farm law. I would note that these sections do not alter or change the standard for the right to farm law. It remains as currently drafted, and the ability to rebut the presumption that agricultural activities are a nuisance also remains unchanged. The Senate Agriculture Committee unanimously voted to accept the changes as proposed by the other body and would urge our fellow senators to concur as well. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S 258? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and you concur with the House proposal of amendment on S 258. There's been a request to pass over S 261 as well as S 269. We just completed S 283, which brings us to H 444. An act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the City of Burlington. The House has proposed an amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment as set forth on pages 4965 to 4969 of today's calendar. The underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment on H 444? And the senator from Washington, Senator Polina, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam President. But I would make one correction. This is about the charter for the City of Barrie, not Burlington.
This is, yeah, that is absolutely correct. Approval of amendments to the charter of the City of Barrie.
It's one that we're well familiar with in government operations. We've dealt with it quite a bit. Folks might remember that when we passed the charter change out of this many weeks ago, included an amendment that restricted the number of flags, the kind of flags that could be flown on the Barrie City flagpoles. We went back to the other chamber, which had not included that in their original proposal, and it went round and round and round in that other chamber. So it finally came back to us with two changes that we note. First is the other chamber decided to add back the flag amendment, which we appreciate. Second is that there's so much time that elapsed between the first reading of that original charter and today that they actually had another town meeting and they passed another charter change, which they added to the bill. That sets up, establishes a 5-year capital improvement plan and establishes a local sales tax to pay for the capital improvement plan. So those are the two changes. We appreciate it. The Government Operations Committee supports these changes and advises that we concur with their amendment. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment on H 444, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the City of Barrie? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you concur with the House proposal of amendment, Senate proposal of amendment on H 444. I do believe that it does. That completes the orders of the day. The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Madam President, I move that the rules be suspended and that H 548, which is on the notice calendar on page 4996, be brought up for immediate consideration for the purpose of ordering a conference committee.
The senator from Bennington has moved that the rules be suspended and H 548 be taken up for immediate consideration. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and will now take up H 548 for immediate consideration. We now have for immediate consideration H 548, an act relating to miscellaneous cannabis establishment procedures, and the senator from Bennington is recognized.
Madam President, I'm just so excited about this bill. To be honest, unfortunately, the issue of the caps that we discussed here just a few days ago has reared its head again, and the caps on the sale of cannabis. We had put a discussion about it, that it would enhance the black market, that it would be anti-competitive with New York and Massachusetts, who do not have caps on THC in their products. The House or the other body provided us with a further amendment, concur with further amendment of proposal, which would allow the production of the caps, not the sale to the public. And as I understand this, this would be akin to allowing our small distillers to make 100 proof vodka but not sell it. And so we believe that a committee of conference is warranted in order to settle the differences between the House and the Senate. Thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Bennington has moved that a committee of conference be appointed, thank you, on H 548. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and a committee of conference will now be appointed for H 548. I do now have an announcement on behalf of the Committee on Committees. The following members have been appointed to the Committee of Conference on H 548. Senator White, Senator Pearson, and Senator Sears. I believe now we're ready for a motion to adjourn or other motions. The senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Madam President, pending entry on the notice calendar, I move the rules be suspended in H 559, an act relating to workers' compensation, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31 with the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs intact.
The senator from Chittenden has moved that pending entry on the calendar for notice H 559, an act relating to workers' the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31, the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs intact. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you suspended the rules and referred H 559 to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs under Rule 31 with the report intact. Senator from Bennington is recognized.
Madam President, pending entry on the calendar for notice, I move that the rules be suspended and that H 533, an act relating to converting civil forfeiture of property and drug-related prosecutions into a criminal process to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31 with the report of the Committee on Judiciary intact.
Senator, thank you. May you, do you mind restating the bill number?
Yes, H 533.
The senator from Bennington moved the pending entry on the calendar for notice that the rules be suspended in H 533, an act relating to converting civil forfeiture of property and drug-related prosecutions into a criminal process. The committee be referred to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31 with the report of the Committee on Judiciary intact. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and referred H 533 to the Committee on Appropriations under Rule 31 with the report of the Committee on Judiciary intact. The Senate will stand in recess for a few minutes until the fall of the gavel.
Excuse me. On my left.
The Senate will please come to order. Believe we are now ready for a motion to adjourn.
No, we're not.
We're not. A motion.
Always about it.
Does not know what they are yet.
Madam President, subject to any announcements, I move the Senate adjourn until Monday, May 9th at 10 a.m. I think that's 2022, probably 2023. I'll go with 2022 at 10 a.m. Monday. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Grand Isle has moved that the Senate stand in adjournment until Monday, May 9th at 10 a.m., subject to any announcements. Are there any announcements? Senator from Wyndham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. While we are figuring out here about messing bills, I will ask that Senate Government Operations meet 10 minutes after the fall of the gavel for just a few minutes. I'm not sure we need to meet this afternoon, but I'd like to.
Senator from Bennington is recognized.
Madam President, Senate Education will meet at 1:30 for a little while. Thanks.
The Senator from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Finance will meet at 1:30.
I do have some, go ahead. The Senator from Essex Orleans is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Ag should meet just for a few minutes right after adjournment, or we're going to have to meet at 9 on Monday. So I'd like to meet right after adjournment.
The Senator from Addison is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I would ask members of Senate Natural Resources and Energy to watch for an email. We may have bills we need to review before the floor. So we'll be meeting at 9 a.m. on Monday.
I have a couple of announcements on behalf of the Committee on Committees. I'm pleased to announce a committee of conference on H456. The following conferees are now appointed: Senator Campion, Senator Hooker, and Senator Perchlik. We've also received a request from the Speaker, who has appointed conferees on H772. The following conferees are now appointed on H72 for the Senate: Senator Campion, Senator Perchlik, and Senator Terry.
Madam President, I may be wrong, but I believe it's 727. And
H727.
Okay, thank you very much.
The Senator from Grand Isle is recognized.
Madam President, at this time, I'd like to list the bills that we messaged to the House forthwith. S90, S100, S148, S188, S258, S283, S285, H265, H466, H444, H548, H727, H736, and H265 and H466. Message to the House forthwith. Thank you, Madam President.
The Senator from Grand Isle has moved that the rules be suspended and the following bills be messaged to the House forthwith. S790, an act relating to establishing the Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis Registry. S100, an act relating to universal school breakfast and the creation of the task force on universal school lunch. S148, an act relating to environmental justice. S188, an act relating to regulating licensed small cannabis cultivation as farming. S258, an act relating to agricultural water quality enforcement and dairy farming. S283, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to education law. S285, an act relating to healthcare reform initiatives, data collection, and access to home and community-based services. H265, an act related to the Office of the Child, Youth, and Family Advocate. H466, an act relating to surface water withdrawals and interbasin transfers. H444, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the City of Barrie. H 548, an act relating to miscellaneous cannabis establishment procedures. H 727, an act relating to exploration, formation, and organization of union school districts and unified school districts. And H 736, an act relating to the transportation program and miscellaneous changes to laws related to transportation. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you suspended the rules and messaged the following bills to the House forthwith. S90, S100, S148, S188, S258, S283, S285, H265, H466, H444, H548, H727, and H736. Are there any additional announcements? Seeing none, hearing none, the senator from Grand Isle has moved that the Senate stand in adjournment until Monday, May 9th at 10 a.m. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate stands adjourned until Monday, May 9th at 10 a.m.